Hey, everybody, this is Dads and Dunks, your To The Point Wolves Talk podcast. I'm Tom.
And I'm Josh.
Today is a special emergency pod. We haven't done one of these before, but big news today for the Wolves, so we figured we'd hop on real quick over my lunch break and give you a quick podcast. So, quick trade deadline reaction. Obviously, we'll have more coming this Monday at 6 a.m. when we do our deep dive with our Wolves Talk podcast. But for now, we're hopping right into Howl or Foul for our segment. So, Josh, Tim Connelly's trade deadline maneuvers were successful. Howl or Foul?
Absolute howl. What about you, Tom?
That's a howl for me, too. And then, hey, all right, there it is. So, Josh, what's your take? What do you got first?
So about the trade, just for context for everybody, the trade for Ayo Dosunmu was the Wolves give up Rob Dillingham, Leonard Miller, and 4 future second-round picks for Ayo and Julian Phillips. And we'll get to Julian Phillips in a little bit, but Ayo Dosunmu is a 6'4" combo guard for the Bulls. He can play the point. He can play the 2. He's a really good defender. He's averaging, I think, 15 points this year, but on 51, 45, 86 splits. He does the little things. I think he's a really good defender. If you like Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think you're going to really like Ayo Dosunmu.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm excited about it. And Ayo Dosunmu, I just can't wait for Britt Robson to try this one out. I'm going to listen to Dane's pod to hear him try this. Johan Berenger was really tough and still is for him. So excited for another tongue twister for Britt. Shout out to Britt. But I was going to say, I think the short answer here is we got better for sure. I think we didn't have to give up a starting piece or a key rotation piece to get better. All right, so 6'4", at some places list him as 6'5". I think you look at a Terrence Shannon Jr. player who is 6'5" and athletic. Ayo doesn't finish at the rim in the way that Terrence Shannon Jr. can, but in terms of size and physicality, you definitely are getting an upgrade from Rob. The guy can ball and can defend from what I gather. So I think some of the numbers that are interesting is he really flipped his entire game. So I was like, all right, let's look at him this year and let's look at what Ayo did last year. And actually, really poor mid-range finishing numbers doesn't do that very well, but elite 3-point shooting and can defend. So, I mean, how do you not get excited about a guy like that? This year, he's 95th percentile from 3 overall at 45%, 78th percentile from the corners, 95th percentile on non-corner at 44%. That's amazing. His points per 100 shots is 128, which is the 93rd percentile, which is also elite. Better ball security, too, from last year to this year. He was 39th percentile, and this year he's 60th percentile. So just been upgrading his game year over year. Clearly the trajectory is up for this guy. People were talking about getting rid of DDV and some other pieces for Coby White. So getting rid of core pieces for a guy like Coby White. Coby White's also like a 6'5" combo guard and actually has a worse points per 100 shots at 117.5 and isn't as elite of a defender and isn't nearly as good of a 3-point shooter. So, I mean, if for people who wanted Coby White for DDV, I think my takeaway from this is we got a really good player. And yes, we gave up Rob. I think that's in a later window to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. I think Ayo is exactly the player that this team needs off the bench. And I could really see him starting. I think he would fit really well in the lineup next to Ant. I feel like it'd be tough to just yank Dante and put him back on the bench, although those might be their better fits within the system. But you can really get around that by having DDV be the first sub out and bringing Ayo in. So there's ways around it to get to the lineups that you want. But Ayo's a combo guard who can play against smaller wings. He's an elite off-ball shooter who can put the ball on the deck. He can score. He has continually gotten more comfortable creating shots for his teammates, especially his ability to shoot and drive from the pick and roll. I think when I think about the Timberwolves, what we could really use at this trade deadline was another ball handler, was a defender who could be a point of attack defender or help with some wings, and a bench scorer. And you could say that Ayo can do all 3 of those things. So I think he really fits what this team was looking for. You now have a really strong 3-guard rotation where in the playoffs you could play Ant, DDV, and Ayo. I can't do math, but 96 minutes that you get from the backcourt, those guys could just fill up those 96 minutes and you'd feel really good about that. I also Yeah, we gave up Rob, kind of to your point, who we traded 2 future first-round picks for. Leonard Miller, who's a guy we've been developing for a few years, 4 seconds. But those guys have not played, and I think you have to think about Rob as just a sunk cost. He's not playing for whatever reason. Either he's not good enough or Finch just doesn't want to give the rookie run, whatever it may be. He's not having an impact on our team this year. I mean, maybe he would next year, but I would have thought last year that he was going to have an impact on our team this year, and that didn't happen. So, at some point, like, do you cut your losses and do you get something for him? Again, Leonard Miller, I don't know if this is like a Finch thing, but I understand him not playing much more. You've got Jaden at the 3, you've got Nas, Julius, Rudy, you've got Baron J. Like, it makes sense why Leonard Miller maybe wasn't playing. So again, if these guys aren't going to play, to your point, talking about Kobe White in the DDV potential trade, I think Ayo's better when you think about both sides of the ball. The fact that he can play defense, the fact he doesn't need the ball in his hands quite as much as Kobe White when we have Anthony Edwards, the fact that he can do some things off the ball. I love that we got a really impact rotation player and we didn't lose any rotation players. I think that's a huge positive. I think for my cons, those are a lot of pros, obviously why I like this trade. And I will say too about Julian Phillips, like I remember him when he played at Tennessee. He was a bouncy athlete. He doesn't defend as well as he should for being a big, strong athlete. Kind of like Terrence Shannon Jr. You'd think he'd be a better defender, and he just can't shoot. But if he can figure either of those things out, I mean, he's useful. Or they just don't pick up his option and they just have a little more cap room. I think as far as the cons, like you kind of talked about the shift that Ayo had from last year to this year. If you look at his numbers, even back when he was at the University of Illinois, every other year he shoots well from 3, and then and the next year he does not. Something that's a little bit of a concern for me. Like, is the 3-point shooting real? And we'll see. But like, if I even just look at his numbers in the NBA, his rookie year he shot, if I round up to make these round numbers, 38% his rookie year, then 31% the next year, then 40% the following year, then 33% last year, and now 45% this year. He's a pretty solid free throw shooter, so that gives me some faith there. But if the 3-point shooting goes away, that is kind of a bummer. But everything else about his game, the defense has always been there. He can get to the rim. I think he's very similar to DDV in a lot of ways, except he's probably a little bit better defender. He's probably not quite the shooter, but he's much better at attacking the paint.
Yeah, I think the difference I think your concern, and this has just popped into my head with him being up and down and his shooting, is he's had a lot more opportunity this year. And I think that that's something to
That's a
keep
good
in
point.
mind. His usage rate when he came into the league, 10th percentile, 17th percentile, 40th percentile, 64th percentile, and now 83rd percentile for usage. So I would say this year is the year that maybe you could measure that on. It's not like a guy coming off the bench like Clark who had low amount of shots, a really good shooting percentage, and now this year really isn't shooting well. I think that the sample size of this is so big that it feels like it's still going to be there. I hope so, as someone who we just traded away
So does Tim Connelly.
a bunch of assets for, but it feels more real to me only when I look at that, because I look at that usage percentage and it just shows that he's playing a lot and making a lot at a really high clip. So yeah, and his assists as well, which I didn't list off. I mean, even last year he was 91st percentile and now 95th percentile in assists. So, I mean, that's really good. That's like what we needed. We needed a guard who could assist, who could shoot, who could play defense, and it feels like this is the player that fits that mold. And granted, I'm a homer. I love the Wolves, so I'm excited about it. But I'm also excited about it, I think, because to your point, again, yeah, Rob, who had 2 first-round picks, that sunk cost, he wasn't playing anyway. So we did get better. And Rob and Mike, I love Mike, but he was done with his NBA career, really, and like we saved a bunch of money, and I think that just made sense too. And so what did we lose from this? I mean, right, yeah, we lost some second-round draft picks. We had already lost the first-round picks when we got Rob, and Rob was already lost because he was sitting at the end of the bench and not playing. So I'm just trying to look at it from a this season perspective, and I know you have some thoughts on moving forward too and future perspective and what this means for the Wolves.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that you just said. I think it puts us in a really good spot for this year. The fact that you could get such an impactful rotation piece and you don't have to give up anybody that's in your rotation, to me, that's awesome. Again, the idea of giving up somebody like a DDV to bring back a Kobe White, I don't even really know if that's a net positive for us.
or a Julius for a jaw.
Dude, I'm so
Yeah.
glad they didn't get John Morant.
Yeah, that'd been terrible.
I mean, I guess the trade deadline's not over. Maybe we'll have to do another emergency pod, but I can't imagine you would then go get somebody like John Morant. But yeah, I think that's the big thing too, is we got a really impactful piece. We didn't have any rotation players. I'm wearing my Jaden McDaniels hat, and the hat is still true. But we got Jaden McDaniels. We still have Jaden McDaniels, and I really like that we still have Jaden McDaniels on our team. I think when you look at this deal beyond just the next, I don't know, 30 games in the playoffs, the Wolves gave up a bit to have a guy who's on an expiring deal, but the Wolves are still about 1.35 million under the first apron with 13 roster spots. So that means they're about 13 million under the second apron. So we can head into the buyout market with 2 roster spots to fill them. So whether that is bringing Mike Conley back on a minimum contract, whether that's bringing back your favorite Kyle Anderson, there's other guys out there like Chris Middleton, Haywood Highsmith. There's going to be people in the buyout market. But I think what's great too is this puts us 35 million under the second apron with 7 roster spots moving forward. So if I'm understanding this correctly, and this is probably something where you should listen to the Dane Moore podcast, because I think Dane is an expert at this. I believe the Wolves could offer Dosunmu something like $20-ish million in first year money, and they could sign their draft pick, and they could sign a couple other guys. So, and I think what's really important is by trading for Dosunmu right now, we get his birds rights, which mean we can go over the cap to re-sign him, whereas if he was a free agent, we wouldn't have the capacity to do that. I don't think we have like the full mid-level exception, which is like 13 to 15 million. It kind of depends on what the cap is. There's a taxpayer mid-level, which is closer to 6 million. We might have access to that next year. But I think there is a little bit of a risk in, hey, you had Rob, you had Leonard, you had these second-round picks, and you don't have them, and you have this guy for 30 games and maybe the playoffs, but will he re-sign with you? But the fact that we have his bird rights makes me think that that's the plan. And also, I can't imagine Tim wouldn't have a plan to re-sign him. But you can have a plan to re-sign him. Maybe he just wants to go somewhere else. That is a concern of mine.
Yeah, I just don't think there's any possible way that you don't think you're going to re-sign him when you give up essentially 2 firsts in Rob. You're a veteran presence, obviously, in Connelly. It's a wash. Leonard Miller, I don't care. You could just give him away for like some Skittles or something. But
Leonard Miller might be listening. That's mean.
He wasn't any good, and he wasn't playing. And I think so. You're not going to give up essentially 2 firsts and 4 seconds and a couple of players to rent a player for the end of a season if you don't think you can get him back. Also, Conley, we have a lot of contracts that are good, and not that I'm thinking we need to offload Julius or DDV or move on from Gobert, but there's so many things that can happen
That's
in
true.
the offseason where they have like those players all have good, reasonable contracts and are players that people would want. So I just feel like we don't know what this team is going to look like. And so while, there's all these numbers, there's multiple aprons, there's a mid-level exception, there's all this stuff, there's all these moving pieces. Maybe they move back from the first into the second on trade day, and they don't have to pay even as much for, their draft pick as they would otherwise, right? So there's just so many things that I feel like they can do to keep him, and there's no possible way. That seat would be so hot for him and for Finch if they burn out this year and like don't win a championship, and then, they end up not being able to sign this player that they gave all that away for. So I can't imagine that they're not going to re-sign him.
That's a really good point too, and to think about, like the team will likely change in the offseason in some way, shape, or form anyway. So how Dosunmu fits into that or how he does not, there's probably some grand master plan where Conley has all these different moves, or if this happens and we pivot to this. Because I can't really imagine they continue with Nas, Julius, Rudy, Berenjay in the next season. And we can talk about that some other time, but you're right. But I do think there was a strong need to just add another guard. I mean, I've been kind of hammering on that. We only have 2 decent guards. And what I love about this for the playoffs is, again, you could fill up your guard spots, those 96 minutes with DDV, Ant, and Ayo. I think that's great. And then, you've got your wings, you've got your forwards. But I think they legit have like an 8-person rotation again, where if you think about the 5 starters, you've got Nas, you've got Ayo. But then that 8th spot is, okay, do we need like some help on defense? Is Jalen Clark going to play a shift? Or, hey, if Terrence Shannon gets healthy, which I feel like he will, after this foot injury, like, do we need a force going downhill? Do we need some offensive punch? Or is it big in foul trouble, or, are we getting hammered on the boards, or we need some defensive help? Can we put in J for a shift? So I think functionally they've got 7 guys who will play a lot of minutes, but they really have an 8-person rotation. But that eighth spot is dependent upon who you're playing or what you need. And I'm kind of dismissing Bones, and maybe I shouldn't do that. I know you're more of a Bones fan than me, but what do you think this does to Bones?
I think it allows you to play him when he gets streaky and it feels good. And it also allows you to not play him when it's pretty clear that it's not his night. So he's so up and down, and I like him. He's a fun player, but this is clearly a much better situation with Ayo than with Bones.
Yeah, I mean, Bones is definitely like overperforming on a minimum contract. I think Ayo is just a couple tiers above him. But maybe he still plays. Maybe they play them all. I could also see like Dosunmu could defend like wings, so you could put him on a Jalen Williams, or or some of these kind of attacking wings. These guys that are good, he could be effective there. I mean, Ant can push up and play the 3. You can do a lot of different lineup things.
The lineup things are fun, and they played Jaden, to your point last week on last week's pod, where you're like, you could play Jaden at the 2. They did play Jaden at the 2 very briefly the other night too. So you think Ayo at the 1, Jaden at the 2? Think about what that feels like for a little bit too.
Well, and we're recording Thursday at 12:26. I mean, last night when we beat Toronto, which started off terrible, wonderful comeback, Ant, amazing. Like Johnny Juzang was getting minutes, So I just think like, okay, now those are going to Dosunmu, or again, maybe Dosunmu is getting Bones' minutes, and Bones played great last night, 20 points. But like, you've just made yourself deeper. You're playing better players, which is going to increase your chances of winning. It's a great trade.
Yeah, I'm excited. Anything? I know this is a quick recap pod. Anything else you want to throw in here before we wrap it? I know we're doing a quick pod. We'll post this up on YouTube as well for folks. We don't usually build the full episodes on YouTube, but this one's a lot shorter as a quick reaction pod, so it'll be there too. Anything else on this before we wrap? I'm excited. All I want to say before we wrap, I know you might have more, is this is super exciting. I know we needed a move. Also, you were going to say, you were like, we need another like guard. We need somebody else on this team. And you're like, I would flip a big for a guard. And again, we didn't need to flip a big for a guard. We still have all our bigs too. We didn't have to get rid of a DDV for a guard. We didn't have to flip anyone for a guard. So I just think all in all, again, like this team is better right now than they were. And there's a lot of room for maneuvering once we get to the off season to make this team work moving forward.
I agree. I think that in the short term, our team is clearly better. To get an impactful rotation player without giving up a rotation player is awesome. If you liked watching Nikhil Alexander-Walker, you'll see a lot of that in Ayo Dosunmu. I also agree that with future flexibility, we've kept all those guys. We've added a good piece. I'm really excited. So I think this is a huge win. We'll see. Maybe Rob and Leonard blossom into all-stars. I don't think that'll happen. But you know what? It wasn't going to happen here. So let's move off of that and get a guy that can help us win. I love it. Go Wolves.
Awesome. We'll be recording a full episode with a lot more of this on Sunday. So stay tuned. We'll be posting that one up on Monday. More trade-wide discussion, other trades, everything else happening in the league. We'll break down the games. But for now, this is Dads and Dunks. Go Wolves.
Go Wolves.